Hi. Today I'd like to introduce you to my newest book, Miracle Minded Manager. It's a parable about how to apply A Course in Miracles and some other spiritual lessons like law of attraction, the law of karma, with everyday life, with stress. And it's a story about a man going through a lot of stress in his life with relationships, with his work, with his boss, even with his father, his brother, and his children. And so we learn how to not just manage stress, but completely let it go. Why manage something when we can delete it? Why manage problems inside a box when it's the box that's the problem? So the story unfolds, and we learn about Jack McDonald and his wife Judy, and his counselor and friend Jordan McKay, who shares with him some very enlightening tips and techniques on how to become more imperturbable, how to be more relaxed in any situation, whether there's a global pandemic going on or riots, earthquakes, hurricanes, to learn to relax and allow and live life in peace. I'll share with you a couple of quotes, or lines, if you will, from the book. But this is a book for people who are trying to get out of their own way, so to speak, letting go of anxiety and worry and stress, even depression, letting it go and letting life flow. So in one scene, Jack comes home from work to have a conversation with his wife, Judy, and it reads like this. Judy has a cold beer waiting for me when I walk into the house. We talked briefly by phone while I was driving home, and she must have sensed I was stressing. Am I that obvious? I take a swig of the beer and proclaim my biggest gripe. Joe Mulligan. Joe Mulligan is doing his same old song and dance. Sometimes that guy can be so negative. Judy says nothing. I continue my rant. There seems to be a continuous flow of blame and negativity and finger pointing from Joe. Knowing that as president, I need to do more than cope with it. I need to change it. It seems to stress me out even more. Today he was getting all worked up about some additional changes we need to make in customer service. It's like he's denying there's anything wrong. Judy remains quiet. Normally she jumps in and starts beating the same drum I'm beating. I continue, even with data making it crystal clear that we're not easy to do business with. He insists we're working on it. I take another swig of my beer. My wife is now gazing at me with a look of deep compassion in her eyes. She almost looks sad. Uh-oh, I say. You've got that look. Out with it. She walks over and sits down next to me at the kitchen table. So he's being negative, hmm? Yes, I protest, and defensive and critical and blaming. It's always someone else's fault. She frowns. Like you're doing right now? I start to say something and stop. Uh-oh, did I just get slapped in the face? I prepare to defend myself when I realize that I just accused Joe of being defensive. And here I am, going off on Joe for some of the same exact behaviors I use. I'm in the same box he's in, the ego box. Judy sits quietly and holds my hand, giving me a gentle squeeze. I see the love in her eyes, and I feel the compassion in her heart. Her challenge wasn't meant to be a personal attack. She was just calling me out on something I was too blind to see. I was condemning Joe for some of the very same things I do myself. How hypocritical is that? The ego was blinding me from seeing Joe for who he truly is. I guess you're right, I admit, shaming myself. Thank you for pointing that out. She says, you know, honey, a few days ago I probably would have jumped on the negativity bandwagon with you. I understand your struggle. And this is a moment where Jack and Judy decide to make some very conscious changes in their life, some very mindful changes. And they enroll in A Course in Miracles. They go through it together. And in addition to that, they learn all kinds of interesting things from the Heart Math Institute, the quick coherence meditation techniques, some Taoist meditation techniques, all taught in the book. They even learn emotional freedom technique, meridian tapping, EFT. So they learn how to let go and let flow, as I like to put it. It's a wonderful way to just delete stress from your life. It's an entertaining story. And some of the real heroes in this story are not the main characters. I'll just leave you to think about that. I'll finish with one more short reading. This is when Jack first meets with Jordan at a little coffee shop. Jordan says to him, "So you're feeling a bit stressed and overwhelmed at work. Welcome to the club." I laugh. "What club is that? The stress club?" He smiles. "You might call it that." I continue, "To my knowledge, the only club I belong to these days is a health club I rarely go to. Can't you tell just by looking at me?" Jordan doesn't flinch. He just sits there patiently, sipping his tea, as if waiting for me to open my mind and truly listen. He has cautioned me in the past about making excuses. "Okay," I add curiously, now leaning back in my chair, "enlighten me." He sets his tea on the club and he leans forward. It isn't exactly a club as most people would define it. I simply use this metaphor because it helps people understand a form of suffering that often goes unnoticed. You even hinted at it just now when you revealed you belong to a health club, which requires dues, but you rarely go to it. You're invested in it, and yet you're getting no positive return. Let me ask you, Jack, how does this make you feel? I shift in my seat, like I'm getting ripped off, I suppose. Do you feel any shame or guilt when you think about it? Yeah, I do. I get upset with myself because I'm neglecting my health and wasting money. What about apathy and grief, he continues, as if following a script. Do you feel any sense of hopelessness and despair or cynicism when you think about it? I reflect on my situation. Yeah, sometimes it seems hopeless. I keep thinking that tomorrow will be different. I set new goals, including fitness goals, but they always seem to take a back seat to my work. I always seem to run out of time. He appears to be listening carefully to what I'm saying, now sitting back contemplatively and scratching his chin. Does this scare you in any way? I am just about to jump in and say no, but I stop myself. I want to think about this for a moment. It seems I'm habitually conditioned to reject the idea of fear and insecurity, or at least not admit it. All my life, I've been trained to fake it till I make it. No one wants a fearful leader. I remember my dad telling me this when I was just a kid. But maybe deep down I am afraid. Maybe I am worried about my health and a whole lot of other things. I take a drink of my coffee. My father is now suffering from heart disease, and this certainly weighs on me. And I have high blood pressure, which is clearly not ideal. Maybe I am a bit anxious about my health and family. I suppose it does scare me, I confess. I do tend to worry about things. Sounds familiar, he replies. And you said earlier that you get upset with yourself for neglecting your health and wasting money. You sense a deficiency, and this can trigger anger. Yeah, that's about right. I get angry from time to time, especially when I see injustice. He shrugs. Like I said, Jack, welcome to the club. The ego club. The club of human suffering. The club of shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, and pride. When we're in the ego mindset, the dualistic, fear-based mindset, where it's us and them, win and lose, right and wrong, good and bad, when we're in that dualistic mindset, we're never going to be truly at peace. There's always someone to blame. There's always something to blame. When we take ownership for our own minds, it is never something out there that stresses us out. It's what we think of what's out there that stresses us out. It's not that person, it's what we think of that person. It's not that situation, it's what we think of that situation. When we take control for our own mind, the miracle happens. A shift happens. A Course in Miracles defines a miracle as a shift in perception, a correction of the mind. When we let go of the ego thought system and let flow in a completely new inspirational thought system, a system of faith and belief and trust in a higher power, the miracles happen. I invite you to join me with this great book,